Firstly, good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is well. This is the first housing hive of the year, and actually, this is my first delivery of it. So please be kind in the comments at the end. It really is good to see so many of you joining us today. The level of interest shows just how much appetite there is across the sector to pause, reflect, and talk honestly about where we are right now and where we're heading. Before we get started, I thought I'd better introduce who I actually am. My name is Zach Hodge. I'm the Managing Director at Prodo. We're a UK-based digital transformation agency. For the last 26 years, we've been basically working in the social housing sector, delivering consultancy, UK-based software, and more importantly, understanding how residents react to when we put new software into it, when we bring out a new process, when we bring out a new policy. How does it actually impact the residents? And we've worked with over 100 housing associations, numerous local authorities. We are the authors of Shift, which was all about how did we do digital transformation, and recently Shape, which is our new book on AI and how to actually deploy it. Our focus is purely based on helping housing providers improve services for residents and staff through a mixture of technology, insights, and genuinely practical transformation support. And these range from resident-facing digital services and portals through to customer journey mapping, service design, helping organisations respond to regulatory and operational pressures in a way that keeps the resident at the heart and at the centre of the discussion. A big part of what we do is working alongside housing associations and local authorities as a critical friend, trying to help turn strategy into practical change on the ground. And I see this all the time. We'll come out with a strategy, but we don't actually think how it impacts the residents or the frontline staff. Today is not a policy briefing, and it's certainly not a product showcase. The Housing Hive has been specifically set up. It's an extension of what we do for the sector, and it's our way of giving back a little bit. It's a way of bringing together parties that have done something really groundbreaking or something that's really difficult, so that the organisation that's listening can potentially take something away from it and hopefully help themselves. As we all know, social housing continues to sit at the intersection of regulation, financial pressure, resident expectation, social purpose, you name it, it hits us from all sides. And most organisations are trying to balance all of that at once, often with stretched teams, limited resources. So today is about a bit of an honesty, shared learnings. Anyone who knows me knows I talk about collaboration as my number one goal. Is we want to collaborate with organisations to give the best possible advice, but to also bring learnings. And I'm really thrilled today that we've got an awesome panel for the first one of the year. So first up, I'm going to be introducing Paul. Paul is the Head of Business Development at London Borough, Hammersmith and Fulham. I've known Paul for over 5 years, and I've had the chance to work really closely with him during the rollout of an inspection technology that we deployed within the local authority. And I think what's always really stood out to me, and still does today, is how quickly Paul grasped that inspections were not just a compliance exercise, but they were also a source of data that could genuinely improve how services are planned and delivered across the authority. Paul is one of those rare people who, don't get too embarrassed with this, Paul, but he's one of the rare people who is both a big thinker, but also a hands-on technologist. He's always looking beyond housing. Paul and I have lots of discussions about, well, what are other sectors doing really well? How can we bring that learning in to create more joined up services? His perspectives on how data connect services rather than fragment them is truly exceptional. And I think this is right now is so relevant. So Paul is here to give us that perspective. Lauretta, I had the pleasure of meeting Lauretta, the Director of Communities at Joseph Rowntree for the first time last year. And I have to say, I was genuinely taken aback by the work that she, and I know your team, Lauretta, have done with the residents. Lauretta invited me to come and see what real co-creation looks like. So we did a call to her and said, we want to talk to you about co-creation. And she literally said to me, let me show you what it looks like in practice. Not just consultancy, not just scrutiny, but residents embedded throughout the process, involved in key decisions around design, procurement, how the services would actually work. Walking around that estate, and I still say it today, and I've only just been coming out doing customer journey mapping with a client, and I actually gave this story. Residents were not only happy, they were proud. They clearly explained what they wanted and how its shaping would matter. I think one of my favourite examples of this is the restaurant that's on the estate. Amazing bacon rolls. If you're ever in the York area, go and get a bacon roll. But it's entirely run by residents, and all the profits go straight back into the community. It's one of the strongest examples I've ever seen of true co-creation, moving from a buzzword into something tangible and lived. And Lauretta brings that experience right in today's conversation. David is joining us from, thank you very much for joining us, David, from Vico Homes. He's the Director of Property Investment. David and I have known each other for a number of years, and he brings a huge amount of experience when it comes to property and long-term investment strategy. What I really like and what I really value about David's approach is that he's a realist. He understands the importance of long-term planning, but he's also very clear about the risks of knee-jerk reactions and decisions when it comes to our homes. As anyone on finance on this webinar today, you will all know that your buildings, your asset, are one of your biggest assets on your balance sheet, and the protection of those are just huge. But more importantly, this is where people live their lives. So getting investment decisions right is critical, not just for the cost control, because we're all under pressure here, but also service reliability. But for residents, safety and well-being, that's our number one goal. And that balance between financial reality and human impact is something that David navigates just so well. So I'm really pleased with him being here today, because he brings a very different perspective to some of these calls that we normally have. And finally, I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Lord Gary Porter. Gary and I have known each other for a long time. I was first introduced to Gary by my father. My dad was the leader of Surrey Council. And at the time he said, look, son, you need to meet this guy. He is someone who actually gets social housing. And the man does. Gary has served as a leader of council for over 20 years, and he now sits in the House of Lords. But what really sets and defines him from anyone else in that building, and in his own words, Gary, you'll agree to this, you're a bit of a housing anorak. He cares deeply about the role that good housing plays in people's lives and community, and he has never been afraid to say so, even when it means challenging his own party. He has been consistent and a very public advocate for higher standards, for councils playing a stronger role in housing, and for keeping residents at the heart of that decision, rather than treating housing as just a numbers exercise. He's known for being direct, and he is very direct with me, fearless and completely focused on what he believes is right for residents. So I'm really pleased we've got that national and local authority point of view in the conversation today. Okay, so 2025, who's happy that it's gone? Do we have a little quick show of hands? Show of hands, how many people are happy that it's gone? Simon, I'm with you on that, Simon. And look at all the numbers coming through. I think 2025, guys, was quite a brutal year. What I want to do is I want to play back some reflections of 2025 first. And effectively what I want to do is sort of break this into three sessions or three rounds. First one's going to be about the reflections on 2025. What happened? What are we looking back at? How do we do things differently? Round two, so what are we going to go and do differently in 2026? And then round three, what do we need to get right in 20? What must we get right? Anyone who's been in one of my workshops will know that I have something at the end of every single workshop called my non-negotiables. These are the absolute, we will not break ourselves on this. We're going to make sure this happens. And that's where I want to get into round three. Well, what are we going to have to do, guys? But let's roll back to 2025. Paul, if I can start with you. Looking back over the last year, what has genuinely sort of felt harder in 2025 than previous years from a council's perspective? And where have you felt that sort of pressure in the most ways? What services were affected?
Thanks, Zach. Yeah, and morning all. Did have a think about this beforehand. I mean, there were a number of things could have chosen. And when we had, working back through the year, we were on the edge of or part of a cyber incident that affected three councils, particularly two neighbouring councils. So that was pretty bad. Working back from there, we had an inspection. The regulator announced that in October, so that started then. And one of the other major things was bringing a 4-year housing management system programme to a close in May. and all that. So could have chosen one of those. I guess what I've chosen is really thinking about what tested me, and I think what's still testing us was sort of around expectations on resident data, particularly internal, but obviously that covers a number of areas, and obviously consumer regulation and inspection is a key part of that. But I think it's sort of, we've known about it for a while. We've known that data is absolutely critical, particularly around what we understand. What do we know about residents, what they're thinking, what their expectations are. But I think particularly this year for us, and it maybe hit us slightly later, but for us was sort of really big thing, big challenge, and I suppose that I've sort of felt it sort of put me and my team, which is fully dedicated to housing here in Hammersmith and Fulham, under the test. And there's a number of aspects to that. We've got some burning questions, as well as those things, what delivering the service, delivering the consumer regulations, consumer standards, sorry, and being ready for inspection. But some burning questions around, particularly with things like we've got exceptionally high complaint levels. So one of the main questions I've been asked is why? What do we know? Who's complaining? Why are they complaining? A lot of it we know, but and I suppose what's behind that is some of those expectations, but expectations on what data can do, which is good. It's a good thing. Data is important, but what does analysis show? So I suppose that particularly around kind of, I would say, as I said, cross cuts a number of those things, but that's probably the biggest challenge I think I've felt this year.
No, and I don't say, obviously you and I speak quite often, and some of the stuff that you've gone through this in 2025 was quite hard work. And I think anyone who's in tech here, bringing a housing management system to conclusion within budget is one is impressive, but within timeframes is even better. But the sheer resources it takes, I can imagine, was astronomical. And the impact to the residents of not having it delivered on time and not working, causes other problems. Probably part of your complaint reason. We should have a conversation about that. Let's move that on to Lauretta. I think there's a real issue there with pressure and sort of trade-offs. We've got that pressure coming from the regulator. We've got the pressure coming from consumer standards. We've got the pressure coming from residents' expectations of what's normal. I was only at an organisation the other day where we were talking about actually how do we improve digital engagement. And one of the young ladies in the room just said, well, can't it just be like my British Gas app, where I can just make it really simple and I just know what I'm doing? And it's these sort of things. It's actually, people are so used to now seeing this in their daily lives that they expect, when social housing provider, well, you are my provider, so this is what I expect. Lauretta, talking about that sort of trade-off, and I know your background is hugely with the residents. I want to sort of come to you next, because while the context is slightly different within a housing association, I'm pretty sure that those pressures land in exactly the same way. So from a housing association and like the community perspective, where has 2025 most tested that gap again for yourselves?
Morning, everybody, and thanks, Zach. I think similar to everybody who's here, really, and similar to Paul, there are so many things that you could pick out of what's happened in 2025. I think one of the key things that we have done is listen to our residents around visibility of our staff. We have listened to residents about what we do, how we do it, how do we deliver our services that meet individual needs as well as communities, and also listen to our to residents and our colleagues around our core purpose as JRHT. And I think JRHT has got a long history that anybody can have a look at, from Joseph Rowntree, and the ethos that he had around when the New Earswick community was built, which is what Zach was talking about earlier. The ethos of what that meant. It's not just a home, it's a place to live. It's somewhere where you feel safe, secure, inclusive, and that you've got avenues to truly improve not only services but communities. So bearing all that in mind, one of the things that we looked at is whether or not our structures were the right structures in place to deliver all that for our residents. And one of my roles was to look at that and to put a new structure in place. And so we did that at the same time as announcing we would be concentrating on our core services as a social landlord, and we would be coming away from providing care services and providing care. Our staff that delivered that domiciliary care. We had specialist dementia care homes, so we made an announcement to do that at the same time, which is always great. We like to be busy, and I think as well as on top of that, we had the improvement plan from C2 to C1 that was agreed with the regulator. And so an awful lot happened, and with any change there is disruption internally from teams, from colleagues moving, colleagues being under threat of redundancy. But one of the things that we did is be clear about the direction in which we were going. Why are we doing this? What are we doing it for? What is the outcome? What can everybody see, residents and colleagues alike? And we have done it, and we've managed to deliver, and we've also managed to deliver it in a way that, according to our TSM surveys, the impact hasn't been seen by our residents, which is really, really good. And I think that comes back to having that clear direction of why you're doing it, what you're doing it for, and what the outcome is, and how can you test that that outcome has been achieved.
That's brilliant, and it's some really interesting points you raised. Congratulations, firstly, going from C2 to C1 and a roadmap for doing that, and that's huge. And it goes right to the heart of why every single person in this room is in this call. We don't come into social housing for profit, realistically, guys. Let's be honest. It is a value-driven sector. It is about doing the right thing and being accountable. And I think it's really interesting what you said about the visible outcomes, because that's what we all want. When we do anything in life, we want to, well, what's the outcome of me doing that? If I'm going to go down to Domino's, my outcome is I'm going to walk away with a pizza. It may not be a great pizza, but I'll walk away with a pizza. I want to pick up one of the points you sort of just said there, Lauretta, and sort of throw it back towards David, actually. I think it's really important. You said it's not just a home. And I think David is a man who really has that same ethos, but David's completely different. David's all about buildings. He's all about the physical space. Lauretta, you're all about that emotion, the actual person. So, David, that sort of tension must really exist in reality as well. And what do you do differently? What did you find last year was just, a real difficult way of actually influencing and getting what you wanted done for the residents against the realities of this is property, this is expensive, this isn't a 5-minute fix?
Yeah, morning Zach, morning everyone. I think picking up on Lauretta's points though, I mean, obviously we've still got the customer at the very heart of the fabric of the building. Is the precious for us at Vico. Well, internally we transferred from what was predominantly used to be WD8, so Wakefield District Housing. We had that shift culturally inside. We had a new organisation, a new chief executive with new ambition. So we had we want to make like a positive impact and be a leading provider of homes, not just in Wakefield but beyond that. So we had all the regulatory compliance things that were tightening, notably Howard's Law and obviously the building safety regulation and building safety reforms, coupled with consumer standards and targets. And obviously, as Lauretta said, customers are paying for those homes that we manage. So getting the investment right for us is really, really important, and making sure that tenants are at the heart of making those informed decisions as well. So a lot of consultation, a lot of work internally, a lot of work to get partners involved, because obviously internal delivery is not, we just haven't got that scale to meet that demand. So partnerships is really fundamental to success really here at Vico. So yeah, lots of things have been happening, lots of things still on the horizon for 2026, but now Howard's Law has been embedded, the new damp mold and condensation space that's been like controlled and managed effectively. Now we can start to put a bit more meat on the processes and the bones as conversations evolve and systems change and take place and shape effectively. So yeah, that's about it really for us.
No, and it's interesting the partners' involvement there. If we go right back to what I said right at the start of this conversation, this sector is about collaboration. For the last 26 years, we've been in the sector. The sector goes a lot further back than that, but for the last 30 years, we've not seen any meaningful collaboration across the sector. Yes, we've seen it in isolated incidences, we've seen it in unique spaces, and we've seen different partners. But actually, as a sector, we talk about collaboration a lot. We are really good at talking about this, but we don't really do it truly. And I think one of the big things I want this year for this Housing Hive is this entire format is to bring in that everyone's perspective. And so it's a nice way for me to transition into Lord Porter. Gary, we've known for a long time, and we've had numerous conversations about the sector and what it is. But can you give us a sort of a feeling from, you've done this for a long time. I'm not being rude when I say that, but you have done this for a long time. You've seen it all. What does it look like from a local authority, sort of national government perspective? What are we thinking? Are we going to see is there a plan here, or is it just the pressures are getting more tougher now because the environment has changed so much? What we're dealing with now is far more than we were 15 years ago. I think everyone can agree with that. But what are you seeing?
Well, first of all, can I just say, when you get to a certain age, you never celebrate the passing of a year, because there's so few of them left in front of me. I would like to make them all last for at least 400 days if I could find a way of extending them. It would be useful. But in reality, there's brilliant people working in this sector who really bust themselves trying to fix an unfixable problem, if I'm being brutally honest, because the scale of demand, and this is largely central government's fault, and it's not a thing against the red team who are in charge now, because it was as bad when we were in charge in the blue team. What I would really leave everybody with is last year was hard, and it was harder than the year before. But the year before was harder than the year before it. And that is the only direction of travel we're likely to see, because government doesn't do joined up policy. None of them do. People work in isolation on specific projects, and they pull a lever without realising that pulling a lever might move the dial on the thing you were trying to do, but it also moves 3 dials over the other side. So we're going to get, until somebody can find a magic money tree and pump enough cash into the sector, we're going to get, homelessness is going to be a growing problem, because people are spending more of their balance sheet now on looking after their stock condition. And you'd have to be crazy not to do that, because you're not going to get a medal for building some more houses, but you might go to jail if somebody dies in one of them. So people are being forced to behave in a way that doesn't always make that much sense. And that impacts on the private sector, because if they're all conditioned by us to put affordable units on their sites, and then there's nobody got any cash to pick up the affordable units, the sites are stalling. So nobody's getting a home. So the housing crisis is going to grow even more, because there's not enough properties being built in any one year. And I massively admire the government for having a 1.5 million target, but you can't build houses by target, and you don't live in targets or planning permissions. You live in buildings that are built by people who make a living from building them. And we're just not there. The country is not there. Last year was really tough. AWAB's law shifted the balance sheets over, slowed up the private sector while it was doing it. Private sector tenancy reform, great for the tenants if they've got a home. No good if they can't get a home, because there's no private landlords in the marketplace anymore, because it's no way of being able to make any money. And that again was the start of the George Osborne thing. We haven't got enough money to build enough affordable homes. So let's get the private sector involved, and they'll build them for us, and they'll buy them for us, and we'll be able to use them. And then a couple of years later, he said, oh, yeah, but you're not having the tax inputs off your mortgage payments. So from that point on, anybody who started getting into private sector rents must have been crazy, because the investment potential against the risk was just a waste. But I would have said that for last year, but if you'd asked me last year, I would have said that for the year before.
No, and I think it's really true. I always love the way you're so candid and you don't care. You just tell us the truth, and it allows us to have open conversations. Because you're absolutely right. If we don't have the private landlords there, it's going to fall back to social housing, and we're already at capacity, guys. We have no more resources. You know,
Yeah.
I spend a lot of my time out on the road talking to authorities, talking to housing associations. Genuinely, I'm probably the weirdest MD in the world. I don't spend any of my time, as anyone who's on this call knows, I'm pretty much always out with them, talking to them, finding out what's going on the ground. And actually, yeah, you're absolutely right. There is some big issues here, but we certainly have got no more resource to take in another 500,000 people from the private social sector, because it just won't work. The system will just break, and it is already very close at the moment. We're all stretched, all pushed. I really like what you said. If I'd asked you that in 2024, it would have been the same virtually answer. So that means we're not really listening, we're not learning. And if we're not learning, I think that's where we break down as the sector. So moving on to round two, I want to sort of set a core question, really, which is, what is the one thing that your organisations is having to do differently as a result and the pressures of the lessons that we learned last year? You've all told us about the problems. Gary's just perfectly exemplified that with 2023, 2022, 2024, 2025, the same problems, guys. So what are we actually going to do differently this year, you know, as a result of everything we've just said there? So Lauretta, I'll come back to you first. How is this changing the way you involve residents and shape services with communities, your 2026 strategy?
So I think I've touched on the structure review. One of the things that we're now moving into is for this year looking at brilliant basics. So we are really looking at our core services, what we do, how we do them, and getting residents involved, not to review a policy, but really reviewing how our service is being delivered. And I'll give you an example of that. So we had back end of 2025, we had a residents repair working group, and some of the questions that we posed to them was around why is the satisfaction levels at the point that they were, and some of the feedback from residents were that, why are you only delivering 50% of your repairs in-house? Why? What's the reason for that? And we went away and we had a look at that, and we've gone back to the residents to identify that actually we can improve that. We can look at a percentage, you know, we're looking at about 85% now of us delivering the work in-house, because residents were more satisfied with our operatives delivering the work as opposed to a contractor that they don't know, that they've never seen before, that just turns up at their door. And I think from our perspective, we've got more of a control over how we make those appointments, how we communicate with our residents. We can let them know we're on our way, whereas sometimes that doesn't happen with a contractor, and sometimes that falls down. So I think for this year, it's about us understanding what our core purpose is, what are the core services, and going back, communicating and discussing with residents and implementing changes which mean that satisfaction is greater. Therefore, we are hoping that decreases the number of complaints, because people are more satisfied with the services that we're delivering. But it also gives us a chance to not doing the innovation, because we're going to be looking at all services and how can we do them better in a way that meets the needs of the residents, but in a value for money way. And I think as we move forward, those conversations with residents and the impact that they will have will be great. And I could give you an awful lot more conversations that I've had over the past few weeks about stairs, about renters reform and tenancy policies and the changes to tenancy allocation, ASB, all from the residents' conversations. So I'll stop waffling now.
No, you're not. But you're not waffling at all, Lauretta. You're not. And I've seen what you've achieved when you listened. You have a real world example of happy residents that communicated. It explained what they wanted, and you, as an organisation, went out and delivered against that. And the outcome of that is not waffle at all. It's actual reality. There's real evidence. And I think what you did, you should carry on talking all day long, but we've got other people, so you have to wait. So, David, I'm going to come across to you. So you can clearly hear from what Lauretta just said there, the impact of having those residents involved in that process previously and now bringing it into like almost standard operating practice going forward. I'm not saying standard operating practice, but we're bringing them a lot more into the conversation. David, from your side, how are you going to prioritise investment, manage risk? How are you going to think about the future conditions of long term for the homes that our residents are living in?
Am I off mute? Yeah, I think it's just a balancing act, to be perfectly honest with you. Looking at like the trade-offs, obviously we've got compliance, quality, affordability, all those things that are in the mix. And as a director of an organisation that's serving best part of 30,000+ homes and servicing it is a big task. So obviously looking at safety features, looking at retrofit and decarbonisation, and making sure that there's like energy performance for the properties, so as customers are in the home, they're all safe and comfortable, and the homes are operating as effectively as they should do. There's then I suppose resident affordability and long-term sustainability. I suppose the retrofit, it costs, so it's getting that balance right for the retrofitting piece and making sure that we don't just work in a certain area that's not going to add real value. So again, it's about making sure the affordability is right, the financial viability of the investment, and making sure that customers are intrinsically linked to those conversations. As Lauretta alluded to, it's important that we get the customer voice into that. And then there's the dilemma about building new homes and development, or procuring and acquiring new homes to service customers, but also developing the ones that we've already got and looking at our proper information management system, looking at all those internal information about like a stock condition survey and getting that piece really right as well. So we've got a lot of work to do, and it is just making sure that we've got that balance right between reinvestment, investment, new delivery to meet the housing demand, but making sure that as homes are efficient and effective, but also compliant, and that we're working to regulated requirements as per Awaab's Law and Building Safety Act as well. So lots to do, but lots of different compliance and different tricks to hit along that way as well.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff sounds like it's expensive. There's a serious amount of money that need to be found, used, consumed to deliver some of that stuff. I know myself how expensive some of this stuff is. It isn't cheap. When we start thinking about retrofit and IoT and things like that, all of a sudden our costs start to spiral. It all looks good when we look at a block and a stay, but when we try and do it across 30,000 properties, things get a lot more complicated. So Gary, so from a sort of national perspective, where do you think leaders in housing and local government need to be braver? Because you're a man who likes to be brave. So what would you like to see from our leaders in housing, local authorities? Where would you like to see them think differently?
So a little bit of local government noise that does matter to some people, but clearly not places like Hammersmith and Fulham, because they're away from the fight over reorganisation, well, at least at the moment anyway. But there's a big chunk of Shire World where they're all fighting with each other because they don't know who's going to be surviving the government's plans for reorganisation of their units. That's a massive drain on attention and resource in those councils that are affected. So I would love, if I had a magic bullet, I would love the government to be honest with all of those places and tell us or tell them the ones that will get over the line in this parliament and the ones that won't. So the people who are wasting time, effort, resource and brain space on will I be here next week or won't I, If they know they're going to be here next week because it's too slow to change what they're doing, then they can focus back on the day job. So at least those people can be free up to face the challenges that are coming. If somebody could write in 5 things that would fix the world or at least make it a lot better, it would be really useful if somebody in Parliament would actually say, well, perhaps that should be our focus for the next year. Because we've got a government that's now internally focused and needs to be popular before it hits the electorate. And we've got a lot of policy coming through that impacts the electorate but has no attention for them. So there's a number of bills that are going through Parliament, whilst we find them very interesting, for the average person who just wants to make sure they've got a dinner on the table every night, they're not relevant. So we are consuming a heck of a lot of the parliamentary space doing non-beneficial things for people. So if people could write to the government with, these are our top 5 priorities, can you bring in policies for these? Then I think all of our lives would be better. Because at the moment we're focusing, and the opposition are focusing, on things that don't make any difference to the average person up the street. So that would be my big hope for 2026, is that Parliament actually gets itself round to doing things that people are bothered about. And if we don't, God knows where our politics will end up, because we're becoming less and less relevant to the people we're supposed to be serving. And that's a scary place to be.
That's really honest, Gary, and I really appreciate your thing there. What I did pick up on the Shire world, and I think it's huge, because as you know, Prodo is, we have over 100 customers in social housing, and we're seeing exactly the same thing in local authorities that are within the Shire. Everything is stalled. Every single thing is stalled. We had a repair scrutiny that we were going to go and chair and run for a local authority. It's now been completely stopped because of exactly this. They can't get the teams in place. They can't get. And let's be honest, if we don't look after our repairs, we're going to cause a problem for the people like David, because actually that's now going to affect the long-term strategy of the building. But more importantly, people like Lauretta are going to be getting. Yeah, it's just a spiral. It's
stupid
really
part of that is, if the people who run the councils do it all and have got a lot of tenant satisfaction because their teams are focusing on the needs of the people who live in there, there's more chance of the people who work in that council surviving the reorganisation, because there's more chance of the public saying, no, we want our council to be like this. We don't want to be part of one of those. And we lose focus on the people we're supposed to be served at our peril. And that's real. And this isn't my strong suit, as you know, but every organisation is going to have to, in 2026, take far more advantage of the technological changes that are out there to do stuff differently, better, faster, easier and cheaper than we currently are doing. And that requires people to have enough headspace to be able to free themselves up to think differently about things. But
absolutely, I think very true.
Just needs to give people the space to do the job properly. People know what they need to do. They just have to have the room to be able to concentrate on it, rather than being distracted with all the other noise.
No, I completely hear what you're saying, and I think, look back to everything we've just sort of said about 2025 and what we've then said about 2026, what we're going to do differently, and it does come to having that space, that time to reflect, that time just to sit for 2 minutes, just okay, now can we have a break? Now, what is actually next? What is the priority? And the Shire World example there, to me, it screams transparency. Let's just be transparent about what we're going to do here, guys. Because actually, if we are transparent, then let's just take that example for 2 seconds there. We're going to be transparent with these organisations, tell them what's going to happen. Okay, we can now plan from that. We all say the same thing at a time. Don't tell me something that I can't do about, but tell me about it ahead of time. I can start to at least plan. I can at least formulate something. At the moment, they're more worried about keeping their jobs, and personally, I don't blame them. I would as well. I think anyone that's called would be as well. Anyone who's in that position. We've got a huge amount of questions come in today, which is amazing. But I've got one that I want to finish off with, and because you panelists are so good at talking, I'm going to limit you to only 1 sentence answer on this question. So I'm going to go with Paul to start with. From a local authority perspective of that delivery, what must improve? 1 sentence, Paul. What must improve for us to improve our delivery?
1 sentence. So I think what I was going to say was...
You do a paragraph.
Yeah, well, Yeah, no, it's interesting reflecting on some of the things we're listening to, and you want me to move on. You wanted a sort of local authority perspective, and we do have some unique things coming up. We've got we are part of we have an administration, we've got manifesto, we've got elections coming up. But I think do recognise, that sense of purpose that I think Lauretta and David were articulating, and everything that's beginning to happen. I think when I joined here, people didn't feel part of a housing sector. We were part of a council, and that people work for other councils. But I suppose thinking about all of our challenges that we've got, on the hard end of the pressures on temporary accommodation, homelessness. We are beginning to build new homes, trying to replace some of those being lost through right to buy, and all the pressures we've talked about. I guess the thing, personally, sort of also then reflecting at the end of this 4-year program, we see what work we're doing, but it's sort of what next. I suppose also struck by how much we've got to do. I think probably the sentence then, to bring it down to something, is around that kind of, going back to your point about British Gas. I've heard different things in the last couple of weeks. Somebody said, but why can't we do what Dunelm does? Amazon's obviously the obvious example, but I think it is a kind of, we've spent, I think we've been successful, big program, big investment over 4 years and putting big systems in place. Some of those are absolutely essential around building safety, repairs, and so on. But in terms of that resident service, we got some big gaps, and I think there probably is that as a sector working out what is our British Gas, Shopify. What is that vision? What is the vision we're working for? We've got pressure from the centre to say implement a corporate CRM. Obviously, that's concerning. Has some advantages, but has some risks with it. But I guess it's sort of, we should be able to say this is the model that works for the sector. This is the thing. We've got to do our own steps. We'll put our own wraparound on it. But this is the model. And I think that's missing at the moment.
Really nice. I really like that. I love the fact that you went from homelessness to digital services so elegantly. Especially as Law Paul also brought up the homeless element and digital services. Obviously, I bet our background. You're absolutely right. There is no person in social housing that should not be able to pick up their phone, make their rent payment, raise a complaint, raise a repair. They should be absolutely basics that you should do on day one, out of the bag, no questions asked. That is simple. We have seen it throughout the sector. Where it's been deployed correctly, phenomenal results. Residents are happy. Residents are happy to pay their bills. That's a weird one. But don't get me wrong, there's always going to be challenges, but I think having that right digital service there is important. I think having the understanding that if we don't do this right, we're pulling FTE away from really important services that are actually under strain, like the homelessness side of it, actually has a massive impact that's completely hidden. We don't see that impact. And it can be really powerful when done correctly, and when it's not done correctly, the people that are affected are the residents, which beautifully brings me to Lauretta to give us the resident feel. So from a resident community perspective, in 2026, what do we need to get right? What must we get right?
I think it's the ability to actually go out and speak to residents with an open mind, actively listen to what's being said, and actually listen to challenges. Because I think sometimes whether that's through complaints, whether that's a working group, sometimes we are very good at saying, oh, that wouldn't have happened here. We couldn't have done that. And I think actually if somebody's taken the time to tell you that something's happening or give you some feedback on something, then we should actively listen, and we should we should be looking into that. And I think we need to be looking at getting people in post who really will not take offence at a resident coming to a working group and saying what you've just delivered or that improvement that you've just delivered is awful and this is why it's awful, and being able to explore that with the resident and then find a solution with the residents. Because if we don't get it right, then we run the risk of the complaints still escalating, the complaints coming in, us taking the time around complaints, the ombudsman and all the investigations. So I think for me, it's about understanding the ethos of the business, looking at those core services and really working with residents to make sure that we're delivering what is needed. And I think it goes back to Gary's point about if central government don't listen to the people, then they can't do what they need to do, and it's the same for us. But I will also give a caveat on that, in that we also have to listen to our colleagues, and sometimes we forget. We do all this work with our residents. We actually do need to do the same work with the colleagues as well, because they know the improvements that are needed as well.
Absolutely. I think our staff in this sector are, so many of the customer journey mappings I do, one of the things I even have a box for it now because it comes up so often. It's called heroics. I mean, this sector is full of people that are performing heroically every single day, and it's mind-blowing. You would never see this in other sectors. The passion and the value that people are trying to deliver for this sector is actually quite outstanding, and it's something I'm really proud to be part of. It's a sector that I'm actually proud to be part of. It winds me up sometimes, don't get me wrong, as I'm sure it does everyone, but things that we do now have such an impact, and if we get it right, there's this very big thing about, we know if we educate, we can improve lives. And one of the biggest things that I think we should do as a sector is still educate. We have people within the sector that genuinely don't know how to use digital skills, some of the most basic formats, some of the most basic options. They don't understand about billing. They don't understand about what a service charge is, because I'm not being funny. Some of you guys, you make your service charges so damn hard to understand. It's really difficult. But all we do is upset the resident. Let's try and bring it back a bit more simpler. David, just again, short if possible, because we are getting close on time. From a homes and investment point of view, what's critical this year? What's absolutely critical? What do we need to get right?
Critical for us, it's got to be accuracy of data, making sure that we've got that robust data, making sure that it's accurate, it's timely, so we can, shape reinvestment packages and make sure that that the work that we are investing in is right. Then that comes down to the customer consultation and making sure that we've got, the stock condition intelligence that has got to be right, and with better survey coverage and obviously having consistency from your data, making sure that it's coded as a single source of truth. Then ultimately that for us informs how we invest and shape our services really, and what we're going to actually invest in, or what we're going to procure and what we're going to buy to meet the needs of our customer base.
Absolutely. As someone who comes from the oil and gas industry, data is your number one thing, guys. It's simple as that. There is nothing more important than your data. Get your data right, understand your vulnerabilities, understand your disabilities. I still go into organisations where they do not have a way to record vulnerability information. It's required now, guys. It's something we have to do. We need to step up and be, if our products that we use, whatever the software is we're using, it doesn't allow it, well, we need to go as a sector and say, sorry, that's unacceptable. This is now required. You as a provider to the sector needs to do this. You do. I was with a customer in North Wales, and they were talking about payments, and there's now a new Welsh regulatory requirement where your payment now has to be both Welsh or dual language, we call it. So it has to be both Welsh and English. The main payment provider is literally saying, no, I'm not going to do that. That's going to cost me too much money. They're one of the biggest payment providers in this country, and they're not making the change needed. We as a sector need to stand up. I think Gary called it earlier on. We need to stand up to these people and actually be all of us, be brave. Gary called us to write us a letter to all of us, to write letters and say, this is what we need. Maybe that's something we need to do, a call to arms, because it's getting to that point. If we don't do something, it's not going to get any better, because someone just told us earlier on, as you said, Gary, 2022, 2023, 2024, hasn't really changed much. Just got a lot worse and a lot harder. And we're losing good people in the sector because of it. We've got 9 minutes left, and I've got questions and answers, and I've got a lot of submitted questions. So what I'm going to do, guys, just for a second from the panel side, I'm going to read out what the submitted questions are. I'm going to frame them quickly, and then just your takes on them and some responses would be great. So the first question we've got is from Nigel Potter from Cheltenham Borough Council. Gary, this might be for you. Homelessness and alternative emergency housing. We had let me get the question first. Then Gary, you can come back on, and then maybe I wouldn't mind a bit of feedback from Paul on this as well, because it's to do with local authority. The question is, I've lost my question. My screen's gone blank. Liv, do you have a copy of the question, buddy? Charles, my screen's just gone blank.
Yeah, bear with me 1 second. So the question was,
Thank you.
would the panel support local authorities to consider their options to introduce a wider range of alternative emergency housing options to help end homelessness? For example, working with the private sector, landowners, faith communities, utility groups, Network Rail, NHS and housing organisations to install housing pods, innovative use of any available vacant land or place housing pods inside empty warehouse buildings, introduce a presumption that vacant land and vacant buildings will be used to end homelessness.
Interesting question. And for everyone, Livia's my producer, so she gets all the credit for this for today. I think that really highlights the scale and urgency of the homelessness pressure. Gary, do you want to?
Well, I was running in my head supporting most of that until you got to the bit about putting the pods inside disused warehouses and things. But sorry, for me, people deserve, whatever their circumstance, they deserve to live in decent, safe, secure, affordable housing. And the affordable bit will change according to their life circumstances, but the others are non-negotiable. Because if you don't get those right, you're costing me a fortune as a taxpayer. I waste money on education because kids are pulled from pillar to post in unsuitable housing sometimes. I spend a fortune on health because their health outcomes are worse. I lose a fortune in tax because they're more likely to be workless. So no, you need to be very clever and use as much availability as you can in other things. And look at YMCA, they've got a Y-Cube. I saw that donkeys years ago. It was a fantastic product. It was demountable pods that you could turn into 1 and 2 bedroom flats, showers and everything. Brilliant pieces of kit. Look really nice, but a little bit different. Never caught on. So that there is stuff out there. There are manufacturers out there who produce products. Use them. Please don't put people in houses. I just can't. No, sorry, I couldn't back that. But anything else that you can do to make the problem less of a problem is a good thing for us as a country.
Awesome, thank you, Gary. And Paul, from your side.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. I mean, we got still rising numbers of people in temporary accommodation, and we are aware of what that means. You know, trying to get, there's a huge. I mean, it's under control now, or beginning to get under control. But like London boroughs, you know, it's sort of, you know, was a threat to kind of financial stability. But because we mustn't lose sight of these are people, families. We want to get them. But yeah, I mean, I guess all the things we've tried a number of things, and we try to minimise the number of times people have to move out. You know, we're housed out of borough, but you know, being the 6th, 10th local authority in the country, that's difficult. Obviously, the land prices are very expensive. I think there's something around the duty there. I think if to anybody that has land, spare land, I think that's something that's maybe we can explore. So it's not just a local authority issue, that it becomes a wider issue of, and you know, we've had a target to reduce the number of people in temporary accommodation. It's gone up, not as much as, you know, the previous years, but you know, that's, you know, but it doesn't seem to be an end in sight of providing proper housing. So I think something has to be done. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Liv, what's the next question? We'll do this as the last submitted question, then we'll open the panel up quickly to the audience.
Yeah, no worries. So this was from Lisa Newham at Aster Group, and she said, what's your approach to AI, and is it included in your digital strategy?
I think I'll probably be the best one on the panel. Pick this one up as it's my area of specialism. AI, yes, that's an interesting one. Look, AI has moved really quickly from something that was experimental probably 8-9 years ago to something we were using every day 5 years ago. So imagine you doing a bit of mapping, you want to go from Google Maps, from somewhere that is AI helping to some respects, to now being really widespread. And being really widespread is sometimes a negative thing. I think the opportunity is significant. From efficiency to insights, But there is a real risk here, guys, around bias, ethics, transparency, and particularly in the sector that serves our vulnerable residents. We've got to be careful how we deploy it. You know, we wrote a book on it because we were that worried. Where we were walking into organisations, looking at their AI strategy, and we were like, whoa, guys, what are you doing? You haven't even thought about the basis of where your AI models come from. So yes, it is phenomenally powerful. Yes, I think it's going to be part of digital strategies going forward. However, I think you also need to be really aware of the growing concerns that we've got with AI. You know, there is huge hidden costs, especially when we think about energy usage, infrastructure costs. These are all getting paid at the moment by investment. So all of the AI organizations are heavily invested in, including by energy companies. But the cost to run this is going to come back down the line at some point. And when it comes back down the line, it's coming straight at us. So we have to be very careful how we do this. That's why we wrote a book on it, how you actually deploy it correctly. You need to understand what the ultimate cost of the organization is going to be, because the ultimate cost, unfortunately, gets passed back to our customer. So to me, the question is not just how do we use AI, but it's how do we use it responsibly and sustainably in a way that generally improves the outcome. Because I think if we don't do that, we're likely to be in a lot of trouble with high costs that we've basically now got within our business that we cannot strip back out. So be aware of that, guys. And Claire, when you're doing your thing at the end, could you just include a link to the book for me, please? So if anybody's interested, please download it. I think you'll find it quite interesting. Guys, I've only got 3 minutes left, so I'm going to open the floor. Liv, I'm going to pass this across to you to open the floor for everyone, how they can ask a question. But please, has anybody got a question they would like to ask the panel?
So if anyone does want to speak, I can unmute you, but if not, pop it in the Q&A.
Or you can use your hand signals. You can put your hand up as well. I believe there's a button to put your hand up. No, everyone's asked via the things. Okay then, guys. I know it's getting towards lunchtime. So look, I want to thank you all. I think that's final reflection. So both the scale of the challenge, but also the strength of leadership across the sector. You know, we started looking honestly at what happened in 2025 and as it's felt. We've then explored what organisations are already having to think about and act differently as a result. And we've just had some very clear priorities for what the sector needs to get right in 2026. What stands out to me is that while these pressures are not easing, as Gary, you pointed out, that it could have been 2022 we were talking about, the commitment to residents, to decent homes, and to doing the right thing, even when things get difficult, and actually having that voice is still incredibly strong. And that's something we should not lose sight of. Before we finish, I want to also share something a little different about Housing Hive this year. I mentioned it earlier in the conversation. Up until now, we have tended to choose the topics. So we do the research, we'll go get the speakers. This year, I want to do something different. I want to change it up a bit. So we want to make it far more collaborative. I keep talking about collaborative. Well, let's start this. So Claire's going to be reaching out to all of you after this event, and we would really value your input on what you would like to see Housing Hive focus on over the coming months. The challenges we've discussed today are shared across the sector, and I genuinely believe that by sharing these and shaping these conversations together, we can help drive impact and genuinely change the sector. A huge thank you to Gary, Lauretta, David and Paul. I couldn't have done this without you guys. I love the fact that you're all so honest and you've all come from it from such a different perspective. We have it from the local authority, from national government, from residents, and then from our buildings. These are all the key areas of our sector, and I'm really pleased that you all have joined us, guys. And finally, thank you to you all for joining us as well, because actually without you, this is just a conversation with me and 4 people. So thank you for giving us the time, for contributing your questions and perspectives. I really, really appreciate you all attending, and I hope you have a fantastic day. We'll see you on the next Hive at Housing Hive. Thank you for your time, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thanks everybody.
Cheers now. Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.